Yeah, my name is Mark Sodare. I'm an academic. I'm senior lecturer at Middlesex University. I'll be investigating what we do with our qualifications in the break and point applications. I'm actually a senior lecturer in popular music. What am I doing here? I'm here because I'm also the convener of the Blockchain for Creative Industries research cluster with the university. So we did a report, for instance, last summer called Music on the Blockchain. Still doing research around unlocking value in creative industries more broadly using distributed ledger technology. I'm not going to, in a very unacademic way, I'm not going to get into today what we mean by good, what we mean by blockchain, where it crosses into the distributed ledger technology, and so on. So, a little story to introduce where the creative industries use case might exist. It's a story that's very familiar. It was something that came up after the death of David Bowie last year. And so there's an artist called Helen Green who made a lovely gif of Bowie through the ages changing. It's beautiful, all these different incarnations of, Ziggy Stardust and the Thin White Duke, etc. And Media Chain, blockchain company, who incidentally, which was bought by Spotify, that's an example of the moves in this space at the moment. Media Chain published, as an example of what happens to digital content, the story of this, where in one day, this beautiful GIF that was posted in the morning, slowly through the day, through no malign intent, gets modified, the watermark gets cropped off, other people are putting filters on, and attribution is lost. And this is not an unusual story, this is the same thing happens all the time. So there's a massive disconnect. Quote I have on the slide I'll read out to you. It's from the book on intellectual property recently. Intellectual property has been stretched to breaking point by digital technologies and activities. There's a gulf between copyright law and everyday practices, which we all know about. So, transformation of blockchain technology. Number one, the idea of an unbreakable link between artists and work. In the metadata for instance, a piece of music or an image, any kind of digital content, we can have information which spectacularly, startlingly, we don't currently have about, for instance, who the rights holders are for that piece of content, how you get hold of them, terms of licensing, etc. So it becomes radically easier to identify the rights holders. At the moment, there is, as my lawyer friend said, something he hates to see, money being left on the table. And there are things called orphan works, which are works where people don't know who owns the copyright, or they can't get hold of these people who own the copyright. These works are being underused. There are derivative works, where a piece of music samples other works, or a painting is based on a photograph, or whatever, derivative works of some kind, which people are nervous about because, again, of copyright issues and not being sure who to contact, how to get hold of them, etc. I was on a panel recently where someone was talking about trying to license music for computer games, and it got so difficult to license this track and to work out who owned it that they ended up not using the track, and money being left on the table. There are already IP registries. The problem is that plural, the registries bit. So what we have is silos of data. For instance, in the music world, where I am, there is not one single database of all song and recording copyrights. There are several, none of them are complete, and occasionally they even disagree. Now, obviously, fundamental to blockchain technologies and distributed ledgers is the notion of a networked database. So information can be available in a network fashion rather than stored in discrete databases, and incrementally we could move towards something that's been tried before and failed, a single comprehensive music copyright database, and the same will go for other creative industries. Another challenge is that, again, for instance in music, but we could think of lots of other use cases across the creative industries, the lumps of rent are small, numerous, and you can collect them only through some sort of collective management organisation. In music, this has got worse of late in the streaming era, so characterise this as a move from ownership to access, and what that means is the equivalent of a novelist having to keep track not only of every time the novel was sold, but every time the novel was read. You've got lots of tiny transactions, and it's very inefficient. There are intermediaries taking cuts, and the payments was remarkably slow. So the speaker earlier was talking about payments not taking months. In music, sometimes the payments take years to get back to the people who made the music, although obviously the consumer is listening to that music at the click of a button. So micropayments facilitated on distributed ledgers can dramatically reduce friction, dramatically increase speed of payments, enable like a tip jar model some people are also exploring, so that creators can be paid direct by consumers. And consumers can also pay only for the amount of content that they consume. Challenge 3, opaque supply chains. Fashion is an example. We heard a little bit about that earlier, but for instance, if somebody is marketing a particular product as being ethically sourced, we actually don't know. There are examples of companies claiming that their products are ethical and then their labels getting found in the rubble of a sweatshop or something. So this is a way of tracking the provenance of what ends up being your supposedly ethical trainers or whatever. Same sort of deal in music. There is royalty payments that get lost in so-called black boxes. There are deals hidden behind non-disclosure agreements and so on. So the promise of blockchain technology is transparency through supply chains. In fashion, company Provenance, for instance, are looking at digital passports which have the information about people and places and processes and materials behind a given product. In music, the use case would be that managers or artists are able to properly audit whether they're getting the money that they should be. And I'll only give one more challenge, although there are a few others, but this is the idea that in the sort of digital economy, supposedly this is an era of DIY, do-it-yourself, empowered artists and so on. You don't need record labels, you don't need publishers, you don't need all those big players. And in reality, you can do that. So barriers to access have dropped, recording technology has got cheaper, it's got easier to distribute your music digitally. Other technologies have got cheaper, it's got easier to make and cheaper to make films, etc., etc. But for money, for capital, it's very difficult to get that apart from going to the old people who always have the money, like for instance record labels. The alternative has been crowdfunding, but crowdfunding as it currently stands is quite limited in that there's very few instances of repeat crowdfunding success. So occasionally someone will make a load of money through a crowdfunding campaign, and even some quite high profile artists will fail. But even if they have a spectacular success once, there's a sort of quasi-philanthropic element to giving to an artist, and where in a charity use case people might be happy with that philanthropic relationship, it's more complex with an artist who you already know has got a load of money. And so there's a challenge in a repeat reward model crowdfunding that hasn't been solved. And so crowdfunding, as it currently stands, seems to be only a partial solution. What blockchain technology could facilitate is what some people call crypto equity crowdfunding. The notion that not only can you have greater certitude using the blockchain that funds reach creators and that funders use the funds, that creators use the funds as they're supposed to do. So smart contracts can guarantee this. You can have much smaller scale crowdfunding projects so that people fund, for instance, a chapter rather than a book, a song rather than an album, etc. But also you can allow funders to receive a fair share of the projects that they fund. If you fund a record that then ends up on a Hollywood soundtrack when the creator gets a load of money, at the moment you wouldn't get any share. These are smart contracts. You could get a fair share of the value you help them create. And in our musical and the blockchain report, which is available online, we look at other potential applications for things like investors and accelerators in creative industries. Obviously, there's all kinds of barriers to adoption which are the same as other people have outlined, so I agree, broadly speaking, with the idea that whatever happens has to be under the hood. All kinds of risks that we should not ignore, but I was just going to end with a quote from the idea that blockchain technology is a meta technology. And a meta technology is an innovation in technological systems that has impact across multiple sectors. So it's great to be here today talking about this innovation across the multiple sectors. Normally I'm the one person in the room not talking about fintech, and it's very nice to have other people in the same room that's not talking about fintech. Thanks very much. And I imagine we don't want to take questions now, but I'll be around over coffee if people want to talk about this.